Hey guys, it's Georgia B. Welcome back to my channel for my recap of day 3, our first day in Indonesia. Thankfully we were allowed a bit of a sleep in after the efforts the day before. At 10 a.m. we went on a walk through the local village just across the road from where we were staying. This was, it was pretty confronting. The contrast between the hotel we had just left to across the road at the village was intense. It was like we'd stepped into another dimension. There were stray cats absolutely everywhere, as well as chickens, and they were all really emaciated. The interesting thing was that the people we saw on this walk all looked so incredibly happy. Even though their houses were barely standing, the owners looked so proud of their homes. And while their homes were evidently poor, many locals appeared to have cars, motorbikes, brand new phones, etc., which is pretty interesting as well. This was also our first glimpse of what it was like to feel like a celebrity. We were so obviously foreigners, and some locals didn't feel comfortable around us. However, a lot of them were actually really excited to see us and wanted to take photos of us and with us, so that was really cool. After our walk, we met our guide Hiru, who took us to a wet market. This market was very different to what you'd see in Australia, like the central markets in Adelaide. We arrived quite late in the day, so there wasn't as much to see as there would be in the early morning. However, we did get some insight into what it was like. There were many stalls selling similar tourist things, such as clothes and little artifacts, which you'd normally see in a market in Australia as well. And there were also several fruit and vegetable stalls, again pretty standard. However, the produce probably wasn't as good quality as what you'd see in Adelaide either. Then there were the meat stalls. Hot, humid weather plus meat minus refrigeration is not the best mix. Personally, I'd be pretty scared to eat any of it. It didn't look particularly appetizing, but that's just me. Following the wet market tour, we headed off to Serang to visit Lembu Jantan Perkosa, where we met Ketut Wasana. They were founded in 1990 and were in the business of fattening and trading cattle as a feedlot. In 2004, they also began breeding. They currently have 3 facilities, 2 of them being feedlots and the last a breed lot. The feedlot in Serang is about 30 hectares and holds 8,000 head of cattle. The West Java feedlot has 18 hectares and has a capacity of 5,000 head, and the breed lot in Banten province of Serang holds 1,500 head. At the Serang feedlot, they have a sales target of about 100 head per day. They get about 37,000 head imported each year and employ around 300 staff, as they don't have much machinery, which they prefer as it helps the locals get work, which is really good too. They have specific management goals that they strive for, including achieving their average daily gain (ADG) targets, improving beef quality and increasing carcass percentage. They have a strong focus on cost gain ratios in order to maximise profit in trading and feeding margins. Buying price is influenced by supply and demand, overseas market, sex, breed, season, currency, all of those things. Selling price can be largely controlled by the feedlot and is influenced by the ADG, cost of production, carcass percentage, supply and demand in the domestic market, sex, government, market interference, other things like that. They prefer pure Brahman cattle, however this is not always available, and thus they occasionally take Brahman crosses as well. There are several important operational factors, including breed to select for tropical adaptation, improved traits, increased growth, and more efficient feed conversion. They do not take buffalo due to the infrastructure and performance reasons. Feed is also important and must contain roughage and concentrate. Management practices such as handling, health, facilities, and marketing must also be really efficient. Health management is enforced through significant biosecurity measures, including a 14-day quarantine period in which they observe the cattle and test blood samples. They also minimise stress by maintaining good feed and water quality, appropriate handling techniques, good facilities. The sheds have feed and water troughs, appropriate fences and gates, good light, good air circulation, and really efficient manure disposal as well. The manure is generally reused as fertilizers as well. All of the sheds now have roofs on them in order to better manage the smell of the manure in wet season especially, and also to keep the feed covered. Sawdust is used on the ground to absorb urine, and with the introduction of roofing, the cattle are now cleaner, healthier, and perform a lot better as well. Low performance can be caused by nutritional needs not being met, increased costs, stress due to changing feed, and poor quality feed. Therefore, cattle production heavily relies on feed intake and quality, digestibility, and nutrient balance. Roughage is provided to aid in normal rumen function as well, avoid acidosis, and to provide other fibre and vitamins. Concentrates are added to increase the ADG and carcage percentage. This feedlot has a partnership with local farmers to grow and use Taiwan grass as their forage and supplement with sorghum if required. Ketut talked about the cattle suspension of 2011 and how Indonesia is still learning to trust Australia again. He talked about the emphasis on the 5 freedoms and animal welfare implementations. Ketut also mentioned similar information to Ian regarding the traceability and scanning of all animals through the supply chain. He also explained that Indonesian government enforced a new policy in 2017 where every feedlot must have a ratio of 1 breeder to 5 feeders in order to attempt self-sufficiency. This policy states that if the ratio is not fulfilled, their license will be suspended and imports will not be allowed. Some companies have actually changed their names to try and get around this policy, as they don't agree with the ratio at all. And companies are also hopeful for the government to change their regulations to only have 5% breeders, which is a lot more achievable for them. After the tour of the facilities, we took the long drive back to the Grand Zuri Hotel. The distance wasn't too far, but the traffic caused a lot of delays. Once we finally got back to the hotel, we were all starving as we hadn't really eaten much that day. Unfortunately, my dinner was average, and I also managed to almost burn my mouth off because I accidentally ate a green chili in my mee goreng. So that was not a pleasant experience whatsoever. I'm surprised my lips are still on my face, honestly. Thankfully though, the rooms were lovely, and Georgia C and I decided to treat ourselves to some room service dessert while we watched some TV in our incredibly comfortable beds, which is really nice. So I've got to say I was really glad to sleep in that bed that night because we were just exhausted after the long days. But day 3 was nothing compared to the huge day we had coming, so come back tomorrow to find out why we were so exhausted, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!